Hello, welcome to Pesto Comics Audio Edition. This is the entry for January 15th, 2025. The Magic of Dictation, a writing hack for hacks like me. Welcome back. It's personally been a great week with the release of Naked Kaiju Woman. As of this writing, it's broken a number of personal records, including records for day one backers, day one funding, total funding, and it's within range of surpassing the total backers by the time this post is live. I am so grateful to everyone who has lent their support and shared it widely, including the absolute hype machine and colorist, JP Jordan. As great as the week has been personally on Kickstarter, seeing the chaos out in Los Angeles has me feeling strange. A younger me, one carrying around my copy of Rebel Without a Crew around the halls of the CBC building here in Toronto, had dreams of moving to Hollywood to make my mark. I never quite made it, but just visiting California always gives me this strange high that I can't replicate anywhere else. The devastation the wildfires have brought to the city feels surreal. It was just a few months ago that I was driving up the Pacific Coast Highway, feeling at home being stuck in traffic, but with significantly better views and weather. I'm sure the town will bounce back better than before, but it looks like it's going to be a long road to get there. Today, I want to share my experience with you and how I use dictation, why I use it, and some of the pitfalls in doing so. Before that, I'm sure you know what's coming. Project updates. Naked Kaiju Woman is thriving. I mentioned at the beginning of this post that this campaign has done better than I ever could have imagined on day one. That's been continuing with each passing day and is on track to be the first Pesto Comics project to break even. It would be an incredible way to start the year and make me feel a lot more comfortable with all the projects that I have planned through the rest of 2025. If you were here for the first post of the year, you'll know that I have a lot planned. The only way I get to do these things is with your support. If you haven't done so yet, now's a good time. Media updates. I've been making the rounds on all my favorite podcasts, and plan to do even more this year. Here's the first 3 of 2025. Longbox Punk. Last Monday, before the launch of Naked Kaiju Woman, I was on Longbox Punk with Chris Stahl. I had a great time as we spoke for just over an hour about all things comics, pro wrestling, and concerts. Chris is not only a great host, but was also the very first backer on Naked Kaiju Woman, which he promised he would be live on the podcast and held up his end of the bargain. By the Wayside. In December, Roberto and I did a Christmas market spotlight at Wayside Comics and Cocktails in Newmarket, Ontario, just north of Toronto. While I was there, I was a guest on By the Wayside with Jordan. As Roberto had joined me in tabling that day, he actually made a quick appearance on the podcast too. Jordan is quite the personality and a lot of fun to talk to. If you happen to be in the Halton region of Ontario, you can find it on Rogers Channel 10 or find it at waysideshow.com. Comics Asylum. This evening at 10 p.m., I'll be live with Steve Bynow on the Comics Asylum YouTube channel. We had Steve on the Instant Ink comic book podcast recently, and I'm thrilled to be a guest on his show. He's had a lot of huge names on there, and I'm honored to be counted amongst them. Steve and I have been to a lot of shows together, and he just finished up his series Atrium. I'm looking forward to getting caught up on that series, as I've been saving it to read it all in one go. If you're free tonight, come hang out and pester us in the chat, or watch it later on YouTube. With that, let's talk some dictation. I'm not Don Draper, but we do have a couple things in common. I didn't have a summer man period, but I do write in a journal regularly. In fact, I have over a decade of journal entries that I've kept for myself. Most of them are just me giving myself crap for not writing enough each day. The journal is really just an opportunity for me to stretch my writing muscles and get my fingers moving. Though I've developed a new skill that I've developed very recently: dictation. It really does feel like magic. I simply think out loud, and the words appear on the page with the wave of my wand, or microphone. My word counts have absolutely exploded using this method, and I think that's what's allowing me to get more work done than I ever thought possible. There are only so many use cases for this, and it's very far from perfect. Still, any advantage available to you is one worth exploiting if you want to do well in an independent writing career. Dictation feels weird. When you first get started, you'll question whether it's worth the trouble. You'll stumble over your words, find yourself being repetitive, and the tool will misunderstand you entirely in some cases. Depending on how sideways it goes, you'll wonder why anyone bothers. The truth of it is that it really depends on what you're looking for. If you have a clear picture of what you want to write, even if it might take you a bit of writing to figure it out, dictation is for you. If you're still in the very early stages and you're not comfortable talking things out, then this tool might actually be to your detriment, as dictation itself can be very distracting if you're not comfortable with it. Every thought that you spit out being captured can be a very scary experience. If you suffer from any degree of imposter syndrome, this will escalate that, as your written speech will be subpar at best. That said, if you're the kind of writer that will type everything just to delete it and type it again, dictation may be exactly what you're looking for. Be ready for errors aplenty. If you're dictating, you can't be worried about every word you say. It's more about getting the words down and then making sense of it after the fact. If you regularly write a vomit draft, dictation will be a game changer. But be warned, the error rate you will find with dictation is obscenely high. Even if your pronunciation is perfect and you're using every command correctly, you will still find that it will mishear phrases, capitalize where it's not supposed to, or break up sentences so you sound like William Shatner. There's just no telling how it's all going to come out once you start talking. You have to accept that when you launch your favorite dictation tool. More importantly, you need to be comfortable with editing. If you're not a writer who thrives in the editing process, dictation is not for you. You will easily spend more time editing than you will writing. It's arguable whether it even actually saves time, depending on how much you ramble and go off topic. You could always edit as you go, but at that point, you lose the advantage of dictation and you might as well just type everything out. There's a time and place. I use dictation exclusively for first drafts. I'm only so masochistic, and I couldn't imagine using a tool like this for anything beyond a very dirty first draft. The goal is speed, and that's not something you can maintain if you're speaking out punctuation or line breaks. That's something you want to do methodically and, more importantly, correctly. If you're in a first draft and you're still trying to flesh out the idea, dictation is perfect. It removes the barrier of your typing or handwriting ability slowing you down. You're not self-editing when you're speaking aloud if you act as though you're telling a story to a friend. I've heard arguments for the opposite, where you should actually do your drafts by hand because it slows you down. I find my mind ends up moving much faster than is useful. Before I even finish a sentence, I'm already rethinking it, and then I find myself editing while I'm doing my first draft. With dictation, there's no such threat. I think it, I speak it, it's written. That either sounds like your nightmare or a dream to you, depending on which side you land on. That's how you decide whether you should use it or not. I'm a monster. My first real full-time job was driving around Hamilton, Ontario, replacing dictation pedals, which the work-at-home transcriptionists would use, working for the local hospital network, with a new PC with dictation technology. Much like AI threatens to take the jobs of many today, I was the monster doing that, in person, for these poor transcriptionists. However, at the time, the tool was extremely limited, and only so many doctors would bother to use it. Doctors that didn't care to learn the commands and the certain ways to pronounce things to get things transcribed properly were the transcriptionist saviors, temporarily. Times have changed. Much like how AI is injected into everything, even if it shouldn't be, almost any word processing tool you use nowadays will allow you to do speech to text. Some even come with auto-punctuation, so you can speak completely freely, and it'll do a pretty decent job of figuring out where your commas and periods belong. Needless to say, these tools have been widely adopted. Transcriptionists are a thing of the past. The damage is done. There's no reason why you shouldn't use it yourself if you're looking up your game. Isn't this cheating? Dictation is no more cheating than using a word processor to format your books. As long as the words are coming from your brain, however they get on the page makes no difference. The microphone is a tool, just like a keyboard. It does nothing by itself. It's the writer that makes it valuable. Like any tool, it's only useful in the right hands. Dictation alone won't improve your writing. It'll certainly make you a faster writer, but is faster better? Probably not. This is simply another way of getting to the same result. The good news is, you might become a better writer faster. The best way to learn is to do it over and over. Write, edit, learn what you did wrong, and do it again better than last time. Rinse and repeat until you're on the bestsellers list. You can do that risking carpal tunnel, or use a little magic to get there. It's worked for me. I hope the same for you. Until next time. Coming up on the Substack. January 22nd, Substack Cannibalism. When the best performing articles are about best performing articles. And January 29th, Taboo and Kickstarter. Do you need to do an NSFW book to be successful? And February 5th, it's time to retire guilty pleasures. Being cool is overrated. Here's where you can find me in 2025. I still have 2 applications pending for tables, both at the Toronto Comics Art Festival and Fan Expo Canada. We'll see if I end up at either of those. In both cases, if I don't land a table, I will certainly be there just as an attendee, so you can certainly find me both at TCAF and Fan Expo this year. And conventions that I will be attending. Toronto Comic Con in March. For this one, we did apply for a table. It did not happen for us, so I have my Fan Expo pass from last year, which admits me to Toronto Comic Con this year, so you can find me walking the floors there. I'll also be at the Toronto Indie Author Conference in April. This has moved to the Toronto Reference Library. I had such a good time at the first one last year, and the Discord has been absolutely cool. Everybody still supporting each other almost a year later after the conference, and it's been a really cool community. I'm excited to see everyone in person once again. And lastly is New York Comic Con. So tickets aren't quite for sale yet, but I'm part of the list. I'm waiting to grab these tickets so that I can have my first visit to New York Comic Con. I did San Diego last year. Very excited to see what it's like on the other coast with New York Comic Con. So I will be making an appearance there in October. And the Pesto Comics release calendar. So I mentioned at the beginning of this post I have a ton of projects, but these are the ones that are solid, meaning I actually have received art. They're well into production, so I'm willing to put a date on them. I have a whole bunch of other projects, so this list is going to get a lot longer in time. But right now, Naked Kaiju Woman is live. If you haven't supported it yet, please take a look, give it a shot. It seems like a lot of folks are really into it. It's our best performing campaign by far so far, and it's still very early, so we'll see how high this one can go. And I appreciate your support if you've supported it already. After that, we follow it up with 3 issues of From Parts Unknown. Issue 2, February 26th. Issue 3, April 9th. And Issue 4 on May 28th. This is going to be finished this year. I have Daniel sending me pages for Issue 4, and we are already in progress with Issue 5. I am very excited to have this first arc of From Parts Unknown done. So we're already talking about doing a second arc of this book. It's an idea that I've had for a long time, and I'm very excited. There seemed to be a really good reaction, especially when people actually see the book in their hands in person. They seem to be really big fans of where this is all going. There's a big cliffhanger after issue 1. I'm going to probably have to spoil it when I start selling issue 2, but maybe that'll get more folks on board, and this will become just as big as Naked Kaiju Woman. Even if it comes close, I'd be thrilled. But From Parts Unknown, releasing this year. And like I said, I'll have a ton more to share. You could always check that post from the first of the year to see all of the things that I have already shared that are kind of half in progress or not fully in progress. But right now, there's a couple dozen projects that are in various states of ready to go. So I'm very excited to share more of those as they get going. And lastly, the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast. This week, we have the second half of our conversation with Frank Martin. I mention every time I bring him up that we stole the idea for this show from him and kind of made it our own. It's totally different from what he does, but he was a good sport. He came on and it was really great to talk to. He's actually making time for us right before his softball game that evening. So we were in a little bit of a hurry to get things done, but we still had a wonderful conversation. Covered all kinds of topics about indie comics and writing and all that stuff. And Frank's always fun to talk to, so I really enjoyed getting to sit down with him and make a really cool piece that you can see the end of there. Or you can go to instantinkpodcast.xyz and see the final page right away and how it all came together. But yeah, definitely check that out. It's on all of your podcasting platforms. That includes YouTube, Spotify, and all your typical audio platforms. With that, I want to thank you very much for listening this week. It always means a ton when you stick around and listen to me ramble at the end here. So full disclosure, it is day 3 of the campaign of Naked Kaiju Woman, and I'm just looking at the funding right now. As of this moment, we're at $4,301 Canadian with the campaign and 166 backers. So that's already a new personal record in terms of all of the releases I've done with Pesto Comics. The 6th one is the biggest one, period. What'll be interesting is trying to figure out the reasons for that. Is it because it's an NSFW book? Did I just find the right market? Am I just lucky? I'm also part of this Make 100 initiative. Did that help? It was a project we love within an hour of launching, and I'm wondering, maybe is that it? Is it showing up in a lot of also bots? Who knows? There's all kinds of reasons this could be happening, and that's why we do the postmortem. So that'll be a lot of fun to actually try to make sense of why. Why is it doing so much better than everything else we've done? Within a day, it had already surpassed what we had done with From Parts Unknown and doubled it the next day. So I would love to repeat it as the next 3 issues of what we're releasing are From Parts Unknown and not Naked Kaiju Woman. That said, I already got Raphael working on issue 2. He's messaging me as I'm recording, so I'm excited to see what he has to say. It seems to be good things by the little preview that popped up. So I think he's interested in doing the next book and beyond. It's all written and ready to go. The next 4 issues, so we're doing another 5-issue set. And hopefully this kind of success continues, because honestly, this is what I needed, right? I was a little stressed out. If you heard the recaps with the last couple at the end of the year, where I was stressing, it's getting expensive to keep up with this. I was hoping for some kind of breakthrough at one point so that I know I'm headed in the right direction and this is going to be a successful endeavor. I can only subsidize it so much and treat it as a hobby, especially when you're getting artists at the caliber of Raphael and Daniel and Mattia and all these. They don't come cheap and they should be paid appropriately, right? So the problem is I'm stuck footing that bill, and when the Kickstarters don't cover the costs, it becomes more and more of a concern of keeping it going. This year, the whole plan was to go all in and really just throw caution into the wind and just fully dive in head first. And it seems to be paying off, at least with this first project. I hope to continue that. I hope to figure out what worked and replicate that going forward. But the good news is the audience is growing on Kickstarter. The audience is growing on Substack. And I thank all of you for being here. If you're here from day one, I see the names as they pop up. And I always appreciate it when they do. I'm not great at reaching out to everybody, especially on a campaign like this one where the backer count ended up being so high that it'd take me a while to just get back to everybody. But just know, I really do appreciate you. I do see the names that I recognize popping up over and over again, and I really appreciate those folks that do so. With that, I'll quit rambling. Thank you so much. We'll be back next week. We'll talk about some more fun stuff. We'll review where the campaign is at that point, and hopefully I'll have more good news to share then. But until then, I'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much for being here. Have a good one. Hello and welcome to the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast. Nope, wrong podcast.